So we're finally getting some sun coming out this morning. It's the first day after the end of the rainy spell that we had that hopefully will have helped to germinate our plants. And sorry, I got distracted by some big old birds. And we're gonna be working on getting the garden set up. So that's gonna be down behind me here. We were talking about putting in the greenhouse, and we may still do that this fall, but this means that I don't have to commit to putting it where originally I had planned to have, you know, just rows of vegetables, and the greenhouse will supplement that when it's done serving its purpose as a plant, you know, nursery for any trees we choose to propagate. So right now I'm out getting all of the pig shelter in the upper area of this first paddock disassembled and ready to move. We're gonna just store the tops and probably the gate pieces and the middle. Maybe use one of the gate pieces at one point at a corner. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that and make a second layer around this garden space down here. So you can see where these are actually fairly large, you know, kennels, if you will. So what these originally were for is for dogs. And they have served us very well in, you know, our building free pasturage, you know, when we haven't had a place to put the pigs, and before them the goats, you know, during the winter time. And these have been great. They've been a great investment. We paid $500 for the you know, full setup here, and you know, we've moved them twice already, and I'm going to move them and use them for yet another thing now. So definitely something that I think is a great investment if you don't have a barn yet, and an easy way to get yourself a little bit of basic shelter, especially for an animal like our pigs, who don't really need a whole lot to keep them, you know, warm, even in the colder part of the winter time. So let's take a look at this upper paddock, because that's the other thing I'm still hoping to get done this year, possibly not this spring, but I'd like to get this one cleaned up. We have a lot of trash. There's more trash piles that way we didn't get to when we were chipping and doing all that last year, just because, you know, we only had so much time on the rental. And you can see that between the goats and the pigs, they have done a fair job of getting the forage down. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of blackberry, poison oak, and we sprayed and sprayed and sprayed last year, not for the blackberry, but for the poison oak, just because we hate it so much. And there's another one. All these red and green shiny leaves are poison oak coming back. But I mean, I honestly didn't really expect a whole lot different. Reason being that, you know, we are dealing with some very entrenched poison oak, and I know those rhizomes spread all over the place because I've tilled the lower field and, you know, gone through roots that I knew were not blackberries, and were so far away from any of the trees in the open area, even the hazels, that I knew exactly what they were. They're poison oak rhizomes. However, after the fiasco of that lower pile and all the work it's been, I have changed my mind on how we're dealing with any of this that's already on the ground, and anything that I think may have poison oak in it when we do start treeing more. I'm going to push it all the way across the property through the forest into the lower part of the area that will eventually be the barnyard, and I'm gonna bury it. Anything that I think might have poison oak in it is gonna get buried, and I'm just gonna let it, you know, decompose over time, you know, a couple feet down. And that's really the only safe way to get rid of this stuff, you know, is to bury it. So this area is all these branches that are sticking up like that, those long, you know, tendril-like branches, that's all old, and they are dead poison oak, but some of the roots are coming back. So this whole area is going to get plowed and disked, and I'm going to have to take it fairly close into some of these trees. You can see that a lot of those, you know, I clipped last year. I tried to avoid clipping the ones because some of it, unfortunately, is not poison oak, but a native plant that grows in the same areas, and you know, essentially it's a wild honeysuckle is what it is. So, but I've got to get in there and get that out and clip out at least up to above head height all the pieces that are poison oak when we do this pasture. So long story short, I know I'm not done with getting poison oak. To share a picture of about 3 or 4 days ago of what my ear looked like, and just skip, you know, 10 seconds or so if you don't want to see it. Long story short, here's what it looks like now. And I'm just getting over the stage where it was, you know, crusty and oozing, like non-stop. And I figured out what it was, what was making it so mad. Hi, Piggy. Yeah. What's up, girl? Oh, no. You're okay. Don't you want some love? Did I surprise you? Can I give you some love? It's just me. You don't like these blue gloves, do you? How about you? Would you accept some love? I know you're gonna try and chew on my boot. I would prefer you not chew on my boot. Later, when I, went to look at it, in the mirror, I noted that there was a, sort of a brownish, reddish spot, like up here in the ear. And I thought it was a dried blood scab, and so I didn't get rid of it. And I later figured out that that was not what that was. It was a fibrous piece of woody tissue. In other words, I had a poison oak root stuck in my ear for 2 days. So I just moved this water trough out of the pasture, and I found a little friend. Anybody know what that is? Good morning. We're out here in the garden space, and we're going to be getting a little bit more light in here. Now that you can see we've got the fence behind me, I'll take a quick look at that with you having finished it. I wasn't going to take any film yesterday because I was just constantly touching things and working through, what might have been poison oak contaminated. And I didn't want to be getting that any worse given what has already happened with my ear from this last week, which is almost recovered now, thank goodness. So let's take a look at what we have today. So up here next to the boys' tree house, we've got a double fence in the form of this gate, and then a panel, and then this is just a dead space and a panel with a gate in it. And it's just not in use right now, so we don't have any cattle. And then on this other side, we use the dog kennel / pig enclosure as we've been using it, plus some extra panels to create a secondary little run through here. And this is seeded, so it will grow some grass. And this whole section in here where the garden will be is not seeded. But we have a lot of branch cover that's going to provide a little more shade than we want right through this whole section. So we're going to take out strategically some limbs on this tree. And the canopy is looking really good. So this poor tree is the most abused on this whole property, and it's recovering pretty nicely. So we cut it real close, just all of the roots on that side with the trench and then everything else going on over there. And it got hit by falling trees. And so I'm confident that if it's doing this well right now, especially given that it's going to get water from the summertime garden, we can take off some of these little branches, even though effectively it was pruned more than, I would say, probably 50% last year in the form of lots of small branches and root damage.
Well, are roots allowed? Boots? Are roots allowed?
Yes, you can wear boots out there.
Okay. So that one gets those. Yeah, it's right on your head.
Right on my dome, huh?
Wow, that was a big crack. Stay away from it. If you get my funk on your head. Funk.
I was going to say that would definitely open it up all the way, and that's the only one that might still interfere with the greenhouse.
breaking a garden. And to make a beautiful garden out of this big, wide pasture surrounded by forest land. Hi, welcome to a 5 acres farm. Mom, I'm going to take a video of you.
Hard to see the screen in the sun, isn't it? Yeah.
I took a video of her.
So we got really excited about seeds this year.
I'm not really excited. I could have done more, but I've just divided them roughly into rows. We'll have watermelon, pumpkin, butternut squash, yellow squash, and zucchini and sweet corn in one row along the sunniest side. And then we'll do a row of lettuce, which will, you know, plant on a rotating schedule every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a row for beans, a row for beets, kohlrabi, and parsnips, and then a row for basil. And I think I might try some tomatoes from seed, even though it's late. We had them and they were free, and we might as well try.
Yeah. So we're in afternoon now. As you can see through here on this side, fairly shady. As the year goes on, there is some space for light to come through. The sun's going to follow an arc that's more like this versus over here.
Hi.
Hi. Over here, that's going to get afternoon shade. So our sunniest spot is right down through here. So Casey's got some mounds that are set up right through there. And we're going to put probably corn and squash through there and some more corn down in there. And we're going to start running across stakes. Wrong way, wrong way. Over there. Great job, pal. So we're loading up the maple cuttings, and one of the pigs was staring longingly through the gate, so we figured why not let them at least browse off all the leaves they wanted before taking them and putting them where we're going to take them.
That one can go on the tractor.
Yeah.
Okay. You can
So pretty shady up here. We might just make that a place for the boys to play at. We're not sure yet. Or that could be where we put the rhubarb. Still not sure what we're going to do this over here. Maybe nothing for now. We'll see. Good. That would actually be a great place for us to put anything that we, want to move out of here along the shop, which is kind of protected over there. But if I lug those over into here, then I'll feel even more like they're safe from the deer being able to browse them. Some of them are kind of tall and right near the edge. A deer could just, like right there, could just lean over and eat it. All right, end of the day. Everything's planted. We've got corn and some beans and squash in the mounds, and we ran some wildflower mix up on through here in with the grass, just for our own personal beauty to look at. And boys have been digging a hole to find a woolly mammoth. How's that going, Clark?
Well, we're also trying to find in the tunnels of Jalon.
The tunnels of Jalon, very good. Here comes the rain again. It might be on us.
Wow!
I think, oh, there it goes. Yeah, just stick it right under where it's dripping. Update on our Paulownia. It's been about a week. Top growth maybe, I don't know, 3 inches on that new probable top to the tree. All the leaves are coming out nice though. Still small, they'll get there. What do you think about that?
Buggity duggity dug. A slug came slibbity slug. Sluggity duggity dug. Slug made the dug.
Trying to convince this tree to fall over. It's remaining unconvinced thus far.
Dog.
Stay, boy. Stay.
Stay. Maverick.
Good dog. Come here. Come here. Come here. Sit. Sit.
Here, what's this? That's good. Stay down. Come here. Come here.
World's smartest dog.
Sit. Huh?
Hi. Aren't you a good old dog? Come on. Come on, good old dog. Come on. Come on, goodest dog. There you go.
Maverick. That is like the stupid place to be dog. But it actually. There you go.
Yeah, now it's safe. So this is my very cheap way of getting water on this field. We have a long 5/8 inch contractor hose and a couple of parts just to quickly convert it from hose into iron pipe, and then just a run of iron pipe. And this is just basically a stabilization, changing to iron pipe. And then I have a sprinkler head that for our volume flow and pressure will cast up to 75 feet. And realistically, whatever those nominals are, even at good volume and pressure, you might not get what you're hoping for. And so like I oversized it. What I needed was more like 50 feet. We're about 15 paces, somewhere between 40 and I don't know, 50, 55 feet from either side here, about 100, 110 foot run. And so this should adequately cover even the garden. It may cover all of that. We'll probably water that separate, given that we don't intend to water this grass forever, nearly as long as the garden. And then I'm doing 3 of them for now. I may switch to 4 once I get the 4th one. I have a few parts missing to be able to do it at all. I don't like doing these in posts. So I would much rather, instead of using these posts, I'd much rather have a stand that I can move around more easily. And I'm gonna be playing with that over the next little while, seeing if I can get that done in PVC. So we have a little bit of growth already. And I'll just take you in and you can kind of see. So you can see the seeds. That's an old strand of grass, and there are some that are indeed coming up right through here. I broadcast this as if it were an acre, and it's a half acre. If this first field is basically an acre when you include the top. And I put enough seed, and granted the seed was a little bit older, 1.5 years, 2 years instead of 1, which is, you know, first years. The earlier you can get seed used, once you buy it, the better. Let's get this show on the road here. So I have 2 lines of 1 1/4, and we're gonna open up our first sprinkler. It's the middle sprinkler here. It just runs out there to the middle spike, and 1 1/4 is capable of powering 3 of these. And at some point here, when I get the 4th one ready, I'm gonna add onto this, tee off of here, and add 1 more line on here, because it'll handle. Essentially, you're only pushing out 5/8, 5/8, 5/8, which is just fine. So let's see if we can get these other ones going, and then hopefully they give us the distance we need. This piece and this piece are limiters, and when this interacts with those, it changes, you know, it will send this forward and backwards. But we can just pop that out, and then it's just gonna spin at, you know, full fling. And so that's what we're gonna do to all 3 of these, and then see where they're shooting. There we go. There we go. I've taken it off, but it is stuck in the wrong mode. So we're gonna let her come around. That's like if you are having it run within an arc versus a full 360. See if we can reset that behavior. There we go. That little switch on there on the side. So we got 2 of them up and running. So first sprinkler behind me, closest to the garden, is shooting about 50 feet, and with sufficient time, you know, give it a timer of like 1.5 hours, 2 hours, we should get pretty well covered all the way up to the hard pan point that I didn't work as of yet. That's essentially going to be a centerline passage for the field, top to bottom. The second sprinkler here, which is on a separate line, but starts with I think it's actually a 1/2 inch diameter hose. The second one does. It goes from a 1/2 to a 3/4, and it's not going to hit us up here, I don't think. Let's see. It's probably about 2.5, 3 feet short of being able to hit as much as I need it to hit on the top. And I think it's probably getting farther than it needs to on the bottom. Yeah, so it's getting a touch farther on the bottom than it needs to. So I may have to reposition that after this first sprinkling. And you can see that they're touching, you know, the water from the one is going all the way over to the other. So once I have the fourth one ready and in the field, I'm probably going to put them to where they're, you know, kind of staggered and overlapping in such a way as that the whole field, instead of straight down the center, you know, so you'll have one up, one down, one up, one down, and then hopefully we'll get the whole field that way a little bit better. All right, so we've soaked this for quite a while now. I just let it run for 2 hours so that the soil is deeply soaked. That might have been a bit much. Might be able to see out there's a little bit of excess water. But there's a little bit right up in here, right along here on the top, and our future like driveway space in between is right through there. So this little corner right in here didn't get. And then because of the tree and because of the height of that post, I just ran out of posts. Had to use one that's way too tall. That little corner down there didn't get it as much as I would like. But other than that, which we can hit that with the garden sprinkler, I think we pretty well got everything just right in that corner. And a little right here is all we're gonna end up not having sprinklered today. Right now, not the easiest to get back up into here. And I'm kind of gonna watch my feet because this is an area where we have not conquered the poison oak yet. We are at our water tank field. Yeah, 5,000 gallons is what it says right up there. So that's a lot of water, 10,000 gallons, except it's not. On a farm scale, it's really not. But, you know, that's a huge reserve and a great buffer. And we're at the highest point on our property until you get all the way down there on the very far side where you're maybe a touch higher. Elevation says it's about the same, but you never know. And so when these are full, you have 10 feet of head pressure, and that is enough to do a basic drip irrigation, believe it or not. We did that at the last place as a proof of concept, and it worked. So we can run pipe all the way along through here to the far side and drip irrigate everything that's downhill, which is the entire property. And whether there's a dip in the middle, which there is, and then it comes up until you get to that same height, plus the height of the tanks, the drip irrigation will still work. So most everything on here, except for the vegetable half down here, will eventually be drip irrigated when we have this farm up and running. So the tanks themselves are 2-inch bulkheads, and that's the size that came. And then I'm running them out into a 3-inch so that concurrently I can pull off of the 2 tanks at the same time, and there'll be multiple zones so that when I have this all set up, far orchard, middle orchard, and 2 for the closer orchard sections. And, you know, I can run those and, you know, really have that set the exact way I want them. And then on this end, I can run right. This was the line that actually ran down to the water trough for the animals. And those fittings are going to have to go away because they just don't survive out in the weather forever, but that's okay. And, you know, I can bring in this line right here, which I'm going to. That's just stubbed off right now, but it runs down to the pump in 1 1/4. And that's going to be our supply to where if I need to, I can pump up into these tanks to help fill them up that way. And then, you know, eventually we want to try and get some catchments on the shop possibly the house, and put little tanks that are intermediaries and then solar pump off of those, you know, to where whenever we have a good rain event in the late spring or the early summer, after we started irrigating, we can be filling these tanks up. And then the wintertime, you know, we'll get full tank fill off of those and not have to use the pump for it. So by themselves, this was $7,000 worth of expense for the farm. And there's no way, you know, even as a reserve for a fire, that I can justify it as being attached to the house. This is a farm expense. When the entire system is in, 2 years ago when I first priced it out, you know, we would be spending about another $3,500 to $4,000 in pipe plus drip. So you're talking about $5,000 or more dollars left to go now, if I do a great job of sourcing the product, you know, that we'll need. And that's a big expense. And so one of the things that we can do to start ourselves out is, if I can source, for example, just regular irrigation line pipe, which is not hard to do in the valley because a lot of farmers have moved away from because it's labor intensive having to move those lines. But we can start the orchard on that. And that's not ideal. It's not what I want to do long term. But that's one way that we can go into this on very little, because I could probably find somebody to borrow that from or buy that from very cheaply. If need be, you know, that 1 1/4 can come from over to there into here. I can close these tanks and pressurize whichever one of these lines, and it won't do like a whole orchard section because the volume isn't there, but you know, it will push, and I could do some off of that. And, you know, maybe on the wherever I'm working, you know, set that up and have that from a standpipe. And that also has value too. Now, one thing to note is you don't want your potable water being cross-connected into tanks like these without a backflow prevention valve and some other things going on. And we will be putting that in once we really get these hooked in and ready to start working, so that, you know, we protect our water supply from, you know, anything that's in these tanks and anything that gets in the lines for the farm. So another big thing to talk about here, in addition to those tanks of the farm expense, is, you know, we have the iron curtain behind me here with this 8-foot deer fence. And I've shown so many videos where there's, you know, 10 deer, 12 deer grazing the neighbor's field or out in what will become our orchard. That many deer will just destroy a young orchard. And so in order to do what we want to do, it needs to be protected. And so this entire field, you know, is going to be protected with this 8-foot fence. We just purchased the last roll of 8-foot fence that we will need to encircle the whole field. And the only remaining major expense will be putting in gates. Right now what we have is just some hog panels, and they'll probably stay that way for some time, because gates are incredibly expensive, unreasonably expensive now. So that's something that, you know, I can spend 30 bucks and put a hog panel across it. I could spend, you know, 60 bucks and put 2 to get to the full height that I need across each of those openings. And, you know, essentially do 5 openings worth for the cost of 1 gate. And that's, you know, and then put wire over the top of it, or whatever. So more than likely that's what we will be doing, and I will just have to deal with that whenever I need to take the tractor into those spaces. But, you know, this gives us an opportunity to ease into the eventual costs. You know, as the farm matures, I will want to replace those panels with gates. And fencing wise, when we first started this build on this farm, and I put in the first few sections of this 8-foot deer fence, I should have just bought everything I needed right then, because at the time I think I paid $3.99. Yeah, that sounds right, for the first of these rolls. And we are going to end up having used 5 or 6, I think 6. And the one I just purchased and the one before that, I paid over $600 for them. So the fence ain't cheap. Fencing, even fencing like this, is not cheap. The posts, honestly, the way that I was able to source them, the small posts were almost as expensive individually. Not quite, they were like 30 bucks a pop. as what I paid for the corner posts, power line posts, but they're just harder to find. You know, occasionally I'd see one and I'd go and get it, or I'd go get a bunch of them at a time, but have to travel quite a ways to do it. So the fence, when we're all said and done, is probably going to land us somewhere in the realm of $6,000, I would say, until we have the gates in, and then who knows what that's going to end up costing us. You know, so that infrastructure is something that you want to keep in mind as you think about your ambition to build your own farm, and what your circumstances might need for the property you're looking at, or what you can do with the property you've already purchased and committed yourself to. And, you know, we wouldn't need this fence just to run livestock, and we wouldn't even need this fence just to run, you know, poultry, because while there is some pressure from aerial predation, hawks and eagles and so forth, there are no coyotes near us that we are aware of. We've seen absolutely no evidence, have not heard them. You know, 25 miles that way, my rest of my family has a farm, and there are coyotes there, and they hear them all the time. But for us, not a problem, no coyotes. So every circumstance is different. And you have to figure out, you know, what is the cheapest way I can get started on what I want to do, or, you know, what will fit within my budget. So this is just a look inside our super packed little storage and irrigation and well pump shed. I did put the actual wellhead inside the shed, and they told me after the fact, what I should have already known, that they would actually prefer that to be outside and then have the shed next to it. But too late. Just means that if they ever have to redo anything, then it's going to be take off the roof. But I'll deal with that if we have to. We have an expansion tank. We have 2-inch coming off the line, and then you know, we have it splitting off into expansion tank and then off into one free valve. If I ever need to take a medium-sized valve somewhere else, I can run off that. And we have 2 1 1/4s headed that way, so would not be super difficult for me to come back and add in an additional piece that would be 2 inches. I would have to redo a few things, but I can also come straight off of the top of this guy here. So they gave me some choices, which I really, really appreciated. The pump company was pretty excellent. You can hear that sound. That's this Pentec. And so this is a, I forget what they call it, tri-volt or 3-stage, something like that. And essentially it can rev up and down to match the pressure needs. So it doesn't have one setting to get to pressure, which is fantastic. And so it's coming on and running at the speed it needs to. And to be honest, I think that well pump is one of the most valuable things about this property. And it's a huge part of why we chose to buy here. It's not an accident that we have a 60 gallon per minute pump. It's, hi buddy, you know, it's because we researched it and we found that this whole hillside, all of the previous well values, when we looked on the government website that listed, you know, the well logs, all of them were, you know, 40, 50, 60, 70 gallons per minute. So having seen that evidence and having talked with some people who do know more than I do about hydrology, we're basically sitting on a deep subterranean river, and it runs up part of the valley. We're about half a mile away from one of the valley's rivers. And so, you know, there's obviously a connection between the two. And so we feel pretty strongly that, you know, this is something that unless the world really goes to pot, we can rely on. And that's huge. Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button for more. See you next time.